Donna's here. I'm Donna.
Hi, Donna.
Hi. I'm wearing my lovely wooden cross that I believe Leo provided us with. And I'm wearing a special shirt today in memory of some very dear friends who were lost to cancer. And those I raise in joy who have survived that journey through cancer. I've been working on this testimony all week, actually, most of my life. I knew in my heart that someday this testimony would be heard. Thanks to Gail, who encouraged me, here I am. First of all, Missy, thank you. He does know your name. He knows my name. He knows all of our names. I'd like to give you just a little bit of family dynamics. Try not to bore you. We weren't really a very boring family. My dad had a very classic story that you've probably heard off and on throughout your life that kind of became a cliche, but it was real for me. When I was about 4 to 5 years old, my father was sitting on the swing with me, pinching me, which I didn't like. It was never hard, just little pinches. I just didn't like it. And tickling me. And he said, "Sugar, I'll be right back." He didn't come back. He went for that pack of cigarettes that we always hear. "I'll go get some cigarettes and I'll be back." But he did not come back. When I was a child, I didn't know where he went. In those times, we didn't talk very much about things like that. It was kind of a secret. But a child still knows that something is missing. Your heart hurts and it's empty. That went on for a while. I do remember some years after that, out of the blue, receiving what was the Cadillac of bicycles in those days. My father had shipped me a beautiful Schwinn bike. Had the tassels and everything. It wasn't a child's bike. It was a bike that I could grow into. It was an adult bike. Had a little trouble learning that, but my grandpa was always there to help me. Talk a little bit more about Dad later in the conclusion. My mom, who is now a single parent, trying to raise a very, very sick child, that was me. I was not expected to live a month at the most. She was the one that introduced me to church and to Christianity. And for that, I will be forever grateful to her. I believe we've all been asked from time to time, can you name that one person that brought you to Jesus or to your faith? That was my mother. Now, some of the rest of the family was diverse, shall we say. We lived, my mother and I, with my grandparents so we could all help each other out. My grandpa, that would be Harry Bevan, I think is going to be on the screen here shortly.
It's there.
There he is. My favorite picture that my mom sent me a few years ago. And he was my hero. He took over for my dad that was not there. He also brought all the fun in my life. My mom was busy trying to pay the bills, and Grandma was busy taking care of my physical needs. He was, and to this day in my heart, is my everything. He was Episcopalian, so the mix begins. My grandma, Anna Bevan, remember Anna a little later, was the strongest woman I have ever known, yet so kind to all, including beggars that came to the back door for food. And a lot of folks that lived through the Depression or are children of parents of the Depression that have told us stories have said how frequent that occurred, of people who were going hungry came to people's doors for just a little bit of food and maybe an encouraging word. My grandmother always provided both of those things. Now, I think I probably have quite a bit of my grandmother in me. I too have become strong because I have walked through a lot of waters, a lot of wilderness that taught me how to become strong. My grandma was very strong. She also did not put up with much of anything and would be what we call today's world, I guess, a radical. She did things that just simply wasn't done in that era. I do remember her sitting on the back porch smoking a cob corn pipe. Now, I have not done that yet. She also enjoyed an occasional sip or two of wine. I like wine. She took care of me while my mother worked at Montgomery Ward's in Florida for 30 years. Wow. Trying to pay the bills, which were mostly my medical expenses. We didn't have insurance then. But one thing, I did fool the doctors. I lived a little longer than a month. But I was fraught with medical problems throughout my young life. Had to go to special schools. And today I am still fraught with medical problems, but I am strong. I know they will pass. When I'm in pain, and I pray to God to help me with that pain, I am given that strength. And I know a new day is on its way. So I am forever grateful to my grandmother as well. My first church experience was in Daytona Beach, Florida, at the First Baptist Church. Don't hold that against me. Yes, it was a Southern Baptist church. A lot of hell and brimstone. I learned early on I was frightened. I promised to be good and never do anything wrong if I could avoid that. I was baptized there by immersion in the tradition of God, the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. We remained there for 2 or 3 years until one day, while Mother and I were walking down a sidewalk, we were met by the pastor of our church coming in our direction. He never extended a greeting. He never said one word to us. And sadly, nor did he express any kindness, comforting words, or sympathy due to my beloved grandmother's very recent death. I saw the pain in my mother's eyes, and that same pain welled up in me. We came home. He obviously didn't even know us. we came home and my mom said, we need to make a change. We need more. And that was when I was introduced to Disciples of Christ Church in Florida. A beautiful little church, all covered with green ivy. Sadly, I've heard recently that building was torn down. A lot of happy memories there. Some of the fun things that my grandpa did for me, with me, was going to see the circus. And yes, I truly believe, as I witnessed, those elephants were treated kindly, unlike some of the stories that we have heard today, which are most likely, unfortunately, true. The best part of that was we had a little viewing point that I thought was a mountain, and I'm sure it was just a little hill, of watching the elephants, because they're working animals, put up, raise the tent. That was one of the most exciting things I had ever seen in my life. I was speechless, even as a child, and chattered all the time. And of course, then the following night, Grandpa took me to the circus, and we had to go through all things. I had to be bathed, I had to take a nap. I just want to go to the circus. So we went. My favorite part of the circus, as well as my grandpa's, was all of the trapeze artists. We used to go, we went to a couple of movies together, my grandpa and I, that were about, I think one was Ringling and Barnum Brothers circus that was made into a movie, and it featured a lot of the trapeze artists, so that was most enjoyable. The other thing that he also took me to Saturday mornings at the movies, and in those days it was so much fun. There was nothing harmful shown, nothing that we would have to go home and be worried about or sad about. It was just superstitious kind of stuff, like the tarantula that came from who knows where. And I loved it. And at home, Grandpa used to play with me with the tarantula. He was the tarantula. It also had double and triple cartoons. The old cartoons with Mickey Mouse and all those fun people. He also enjoyed fishing with me. As I grew a little older, we loved to fish off the bridge, which runs across the Halifax River that combines the peninsula across to the ocean. We usually caught quite a few fish from the bridge, and crabs. My grandpa would go and get a hunk of beef from the butcher, tie a rope around it, and dangle it way down off the top of the bridge, just high enough above the water that the crabs would come up and grab it. He had a long pole with a metal net. He caught most of them until I started thinking I could pull the meat up, and they all dropped off. But I was so proud to be able to walk through the sidewalks of downtown Daytona Beach, was not very large then, with my string of fish, smiling all the way home. I later found, and of course we had that fresh fish, fresh crab that evening. Today, you would not dare eat anything out of the Halifax River. Man has destroyed it. I found out later, not too long ago, as an adult, my grandfather actually hated fishing. But he endured it because he knew how much I loved it. I call that unconditional love. My mother worked very hard at Montgomery Wards to set aside a certain amount of money that she and I could take an annual vacation. We went to a lot of exciting places. We went to Cumberland Falls in Kentucky. It was wonderful. We had to send my grandmother back home because she got so sick on the turns that she just should fly me home. I can't do this. So we flew her home. But one of our favorite places was Pensacola, Florida. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it's a beautiful place. At least it was the last time I saw it, and that's been a long time. Lots of pigeons in the park. My mother was terrified of the pigeons. But she couldn't leave me, so she stuck it out and waved her hand around at them. And I fed them, of course, to bring them closer. When I was about 10 years old, while we were packing to go on our next vacation, which was to be Pensacola, I heard and I felt the voice of God speak to me in a way I had never known. And I have known this since this happened to me on other occasions. The message that I got that came all through my body, it radiated in me, and I could audibly hear it, was, don't go. Your grandfather is going to become very ill. And it terrified me. Didn't know who it was, where it came from, what was going to happen to my grandmother. So I ran to my mom, told her this scary story, and she calmed me. She also reminded me that even though we had done it many times, that I sometimes got nervous going on the bus. And yes, it was a Greyhound bus. That was all we used in those times. You either walked or you used a Greyhound bus. So we had taken that drive to Pensacola on the Greyhound bus. So after I heard this voice again, I went back to my mother and said, Mom, I have heard it again. It is real. Please believe me. She shrugged it off because she couldn't make any sense of it. I heard it a couple more times before I fell asleep. I got up the next morning. We were preparing breakfast. And after I was nervous and I was not understanding what had happened to me, I promptly threw up my entire breakfast. Again, I was just told I was nervous. Okay. Well, we went. On the first day, most people then at least were barefooted most of the time, no matter where you went, unless it was something real special. The first thing that happened to me was someone had flicked an unused, still lit cigarette on the sidewalk I was walking on, and I of course stepped on it. And it hurt so bad. And I was crying, and Mom said, well, what's wrong with you? And I said, I stepped on something. And she said, I think you just stubbed your toe. And I said, well, whatever I did, it really hurts. And she said, well, stop crying, we're gonna go in here and eat. Well, we tried to go in there and have a little bit of lunch, and evidently I was causing my mother great embarrassment because I couldn't stop crying. And when the lady handed me a glass of water, I was shaking so hard that it fell and broke on the floor. And we got out of there because my mother was embarrassed. No talk of, can we look at the foot and see what's wrong? And she said, well, what do you think you stepped on? I said, I stepped on a cigarette. And I pulled up my bare foot, and a huge blister had already started to form. And of course, my mom felt terrible, and she comforted me, and we got stuff to put on it. Day 2, we were on a local bus that was crossing on a very low-lying bridge, old bridge, close to the water. Pensacola is known for sudden storms coming in. They just come in from nowhere. Well, it came as we were in about the middle of that bridge. And it was an old bus. The entire bus was shaking from the strong winds and was actually doing this. And you could see the water right there. Well, everyone was screaming. Children were crying. At least I know one child that was crying and screaming. That was me. We didn't know what was going on. On day 3, we went to one of our favorite restaurants to have a dinner. We both became terribly ill. Maybe food poisoning? Who knows? But we did know that we had had enough fun on this vacation. Done. We got on the first outgoing bus to go home. Mom and I walked. As I said, that's what we did. It was the middle of the night. It was dark. Kind of scary, but we really didn't have to worry so much about people jumping out of bushes and harming you. As we walked, carrying our suitcases in hands towards the house, we both heard a woman's voice cry out, "Dorothy," that's my mom's name, "is that you?" And my mother answered, "Yes." "Oh," she said, "I have been waiting for you." We didn't have cell phones. You could find very few public telephones, and it was costly to make long-distance phone calls. She said, "Thank God you came home early. Your grandfather has had a major heart attack and is in the hospital, not expected to live." Now, some may speculate that this was a coincidence. I get chills now. I know better. I know better. I know without a doubt that I heard and felt God's voice and presence. My grandpa did come through that heart attack. And I did tell him this story, and he believed it. My grandma left us first. She had a debilitating stroke, which left her paralyzed on one side and unable to talk. Talking was her most favorite thing in the world. And about the only thing she could say was something that